Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, back for another video. So let's go ahead and talk about this Kyle Kashuv situation because I have thoughts. A couple of days ago, a friend from college texted me this link to this story about some little kid, like a literal 18-year-old named Kyle Kashuv with just an LOL. And I read the story and I was like, yeah, LOL, because I am not shedding any tears for Kyle. So in case you're unfamiliar, Kyle Kashuv he just graduated from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. He's a survivor of that Parkland shooting a couple of years ago. And since that shooting, Kyle now has hundreds of thousands of followers, and he's grown to be a very prominent young conservative activist. He's very pro 2A, like 2A rights, Second Amendment rights. And he was admitted to Harvard College, which is the undergraduate program at Harvard, a couple of months ago in March. But Kyle's acceptance to Harvard was rescinded after some classmates of his released. First of all, there was this Google Doc where they were all sharing a study guide. And in that Google Doc, for some reason, Kyle wrote the N-word a dozen times. And not only that, that classmate produced text messages, or maybe it was another one. But anyways, there were text messages where Kyle was ranking a girl's hotness and then saying, oh, she only goes for N-word jocks, okay? N-word jocks, which if you're familiar with the alt-right and the kind of rhetoric that they have around masculinity and white womanhood, like that's very alt-right of him. But also he has allegedly used that word in private text messages and in person. This whistleblower came out, it immediately began circulating, and there was just an instant push to get Kyle's acceptance to Harvard rescinded. And I kind of believe you got to hit people where it hurts. And I'm sure for Kyle, the best way to hurt him was that Harvard College acceptance. And it worked. After that revelation, there was immediate fallout. He had to resign from Turning Point USA, which is a group for young conservatives. That's how Candace Owens got her start, and Charlie Kirk heads it. So he had to resign, which is so interesting, right? It's so interesting that the only thing that's too far for conservatives is literally saying the N-word. There's no doubt in my mind that in addition to being a pretty decent student, I assume, that Kyle was admitted to Harvard because of his notoriety. I mean, come on. You survived this horrific shooting and you come out of it being a second rights amendment activist? What a gimmick. I think what I've learned for the class of 2023, which feels crazy to say, we are all getting old, but for the class of 2023, 43,000 people applied and there are still about 1,700 spots. And so in order to secure one of those spots, you've got to be a star, you've got to be a standout, and that is certainly a way to stand out. But there are good and bad kinds of attention. And not to mention that Marjory Stoneman Douglas is exactly the kind of school that you'd expect to produce Harvard students. It's upper middle class and it's white. So I'm not super surprised. Now, I'd kind of heard about this story before, but it really started making the rounds for me and getting on the radar for a lot of my classmates a couple of days ago after Kyle posted about it on his Twitter. Now, I don't know what he was trying to do. I don't know what the aim was, but he posted all of these details, including his correspondence between him and the university. Let's read a couple of his tweets. Harvard deciding that someone can't grow, especially after a life-altering event like the shooting, is deeply concerning. If any institution should understand growth, it's Harvard, which is looked to as the pinnacle of higher education despite its checkered past. Throughout its history, Harvard's faculty has included slave owners, segregationists, bigots, and anti-Semites. If Harvard is suggesting that growth isn't possible and that our past defines our future, then Harvard is an inherently racist institution. But I don't believe that. Okay, Kyle. There are a couple of funny things here. One of them is an 18-year-old telling us that it's unfair to judge him by what he did when he was 16. Kyle, what do you think college admissions is all about? When you're listing off awards and recognitions and getting a recommendation from your sophomore year Spanish teacher, they're judging you on your 16-year-old self. That's the game. You're selling the colleges that you want to go to an idealized version of your 16-year-old self. Now, if you're lucky, they don't find out the real you until later. But if you're dumb and unlucky, this happens. What's hilarious is Kyle is out here sending those tweets talking about, oh, that was 2 years ago and my 16-year-old self like he's 50. Kyle, you are 18 years old. In fact, he probably sent those tweets from his childhood bedroom. So what are you talking about? Where is the growth? And as for Kyle's other tweets about racists and segregationists and slave owners, I mean, yeah, like, that's true. But I actually think that that's why Harvard should not allow him to come. Harvard will never be able to get away from that history. They're not going to be able to wipe it clean. But what they can do is make sure that their students of color there right now can have a safe and supportive environment. And look, they are not succeeding in that on all levels, but at least they can try. And you know, one thing that would not help that? Admitting a student like Kyle. And it should be noted that there is actually precedence for Harvard saying, oh, no, you can't come here. A couple of years ago, they rescinded the admission of 10 students who got caught in, I think on Facebook, posting racist and misogynistic stuff. And they said, okay, sorry, bye. The college admission system is really messed up, especially for these elite universities. Harvard acceptance is a valuable commodity, too valuable to waste on a student like Kyle. He wouldn't have gotten in if those texts had come out 2 months earlier. There's a long list of people waiting to get in. Give it to one of them. Choose one. Of course, conservatives have come out in his defense. I mean, Ben Shapiro called the decision disgusting. Ben Shapiro, who justified the killing of 16-year-old Trayvon Martin. Okay, and I'm old enough to remember when conservatives thought it was perfectly fine to go after the progressive Parkland students. Harvard is an extremely wealthy private institution. Now, I thought conservatives were in favor of private institutions doing whatever they want, including refusing service to gay people. But when it comes to a private college saying we don't want that person in our student body, suddenly it's a problem. And if we're really talking rights, what about the rights of Black Harvard students to not sit in a classroom with Kyle, who has done nothing to earn forgiveness? I'm someone who believes that one of the ways we deter bigotry is by doling out consequences. Yeah, we want to change hearts and minds, but sometimes that takes too long and it doesn't work. So you just got to hit people where it hurts. And for a lot of people, that's prestige and paychecks. And that's really why I have no tears for Kyle. I mean, he learned something, didn't he? And I'll say again and again that I think everybody is recoverable, really. I think everybody can make a comeback. That doesn't mean they will, but it's possible. But you have to demonstrate remorse, you have to do work, you have to make amends. It's not automatic. So no, I do not believe in indefinite punishments for people who demonstrate a long-term commitment to changing themselves. But that doesn't mean I don't think that there shouldn't be consequences. Certainly, there should be consequences. And right now, Kyle is experiencing a consequence for his actions. Kyle contends that he's grown out of that racism, that the shooting magically changed him. I mean, I guess, maybe. That still doesn't mean that you deserve a spot at Harvard. What this means is that when he was accepted, Harvard did not have all of the information that it needed to make a decision. When Harvard was presented with new information, they came to a new conclusion. But we also need to talk about the fact that there is no proof that Kyle is not still racist. How could we be convinced that he does not still hold those views? What work has he done? He's apologizing now because he wants to be a Harvard grad. But we can't just assume that because time has passed that his views have changed. In his tweets, he's talked about growth. In his interviews, he's talked about growth. But where is the growth? Show me the receipts. I'm sorry doesn't cut it when something you want is on the line. And I actually do believe in extending a certain kind of grace to kids. Their brains aren't developed. We get it. But Kyle's life isn't ruined. He just doesn't get to go to Harvard. Prison ruins lives. This is a minor inconvenience. So another white kid from an upper middle class community doesn't get to be a Harvard graduate. Oh well, there are real problems. Kyle needs to use some of that grit conservatives lecture the rest of us about and find a different path. Make a new way. And congrats to whoever gets a spot. Welcome to the family. Well, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Head on over to Patreon to check out all of the bonus content. And thank you for all of the Patreon supporters. I appreciate you guys so much. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. Send me an email. Message me on Instagram or Twitter. Buy some merch. I haven't worn a merch shirt in a while, but buy some merch. Sign up for the email newsletter, and I'll see you next time. Bye.